We are back now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk about previewing one of the upcoming games in Week 6. But before I do that, on that note, I just saw a report talking about Colts wide receiver Michael Pittman. According to reports, he is dealing with a back injury that could sideline him for multiple weeks. So, the report also said that being placed on the injured reserve is another consideration for the Colts. So, that's a big blow. Breaking news there from ESPN on Michael Pittman, the number one receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. So that's pretty big for them, obviously, because Michael Pittman, I felt like against the Steelers, we're starting to kind of turn it up a little bit. He played very well in that game, but now it looks like he is going to be sidelined indefinitely, at least from that report. So that is that. That's the Colts side of things. But now looking at this preview here, the Commanders taking on the Baltimore Ravens. To me, this is the most must-watch game of this week in Week 6. It takes place in Baltimore, where Jayden Daniels and the 4-1 Commanders take on Lamar Jackson and the 3-2 Baltimore Ravens. For right now, Jayden Daniels seems to be like the greatest thing going in football, right? Everyone can't say enough about Jayden Daniels and the performances he's being put on, the records he's breaking, and things like that. He can do no wrong right now in the eyes of a lot of people in the NFL. But this is undoubtedly Jayden Daniels' greatest challenge so far, right? And Baltimore faces another fellow top four scoring team in the NFL, right? These two teams have definitely, if you can say anything about these two teams, is that their offense is definitely not lacking. You look at the Washington Commanders putting up 30 plus in their last game against the Cardinals, another 30 plus against the Cincinnati Bengals, another 30 plus. They've been finding it easy to score against these teams, and the Baltimore Ravens no different, right? They handled the Buffalo Bills. They just barely won against the Cincinnati Bengals and things like that. They're also not finding it too hard to get in the end zone either. So, two top four scoring teams should bring a lot of excitement in this game. And the Ravens, like I mentioned, are playing another top four scoring team because they just played the Cincinnati Bengals as well. The Bengals are fourth in scoring in the NFL right now at 28 points per game. Washington is actually number one. They've scored the most points per game in the NFL thus far with a rookie quarterback. So that is very impressive. And Baltimore is actually in second, averaging 29 points per game. So if we could take anything from the Bengals and Ravens game and how exciting that was, that's what I'm hoping to see in this Week 6 matchup between the Ravens and the Commanders. And the biggest thing, obviously, that stands out are the two quarterbacks, right? Lamar and how he's taken the NFL by storm with his multi-dimensional skill set that he brings on the ground. He's become a lot better of a passer throughout his career. But Jayden Daniels, looking pretty much in the mirror, looking at Lamar Jackson, right? Almost the exact same thing you get from Lamar Jackson you get with Jayden Daniels now, but I think what's the difference is that Jayden Daniels has come in a lot more refined. Obviously, he spent a lot more time in college than the typical rookie quarterback does, and I think it's paid off. Certainly, he looks a lot more in control. His demeanor is very, very calm, very modest, and everything like that, but he always feels like he knows and is in control, like I said. And I'm pretty sure he still leads the NFL in completion percentage as well as a rookie. So it's very nerve wracking a little bit looking at how just Jayden Daniels has come in and very swiftly has gotten the handle, it looks like, of the NFL so far. And this matchup is going to be interesting for a lot more reasons just outside of the quarterbacks that definitely bring a lot. But you're looking at also the top two rushing teams in the NFL right now. Two top five teams in total yards as well are what these two squads bring to the table. But the differences come on the defensive side of the ball because it's not so dominant on that side, let's say, right? Washington is around middle of the pack with a 23 points allowed per game. Like I said, middle of the pack, whereas the Baltimore Ravens are 26th in the NFL, allowing 25.2 points per game. So, for every point they score, it seems like they give up just as many points as well. So, it could kind of point to the fact that the Ravens almost need to score that many points because their defense can't really hold other than that game against the Buffalo Bills. Also, looking at these two defenses as well, Baltimore, while their passing defense, maybe their overall defense might not be great, maybe top 10 right now, the Baltimore Ravens have the best run defense so far, averaging or allowing other teams to average 60 rushing yards per game, while the Washington Commanders are on the other side of the spectrum now because they've allowed 130 yards per game to the run. Very different there. The Commanders going up against this Ravens team who, like I said, is one of the top 2 rushing teams in the NFL. Not a great sign there. So that's another thing. Also, now focusing on specifically the passing game, Washington is 13th in passing yards allowed, allowing 198 passing yards allowed, and the Baltimore Ravens are allowing the second most passing yards per game at 280 passing yards per game. And like I said before, Jayden Daniels, if not first, probably top 3 most accurate quarterbacks right now based on the completion percentage. So it doesn't really match up well in that case. But you could also make the point that the Commanders, while they have Terry McLaurin, are they going to rely on those other guys to step up, right? Daimi Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Zacchaeus, Zach Ertz. Are these guys really going to be up to the challenge and make big plays when their number is called? You know, Terry can do his thing, right? But I feel like the Ravens should and will take him away in this game. So how does that affect it? Can the Ravens defense sort of step up in that regard? Or will the Commanders' other stars try to step up? And how successful will they be in that aspect? So I thought that was pretty interesting looking at both of these teams. And also focusing on the Commanders a little bit more. There's no real severe injuries coming into this game so far, just where we are in the week. They've won their last 4 games in a row since losing to Tampa Bay. And, Jayden Daniels' stellar performances are really what take the headlines, what make the headlines so far in the NFL. But their defense hasn't been too bad either. And I know it's a collaborative effort, right? With the offense playing so well, getting out to leads, that defense, I always stress it on here, plays a lot better because they know they could take a bit more risks. They could send more people because they're playing with a lead now. They don't have to preserve anything. And the Commanders' offense has done a great job of allowing them to do that. A big shout out to Cliff Kingsbury, right? He might not have been great as a head coach, but as a play caller, as a offensive coordinator, he's really just stepped right in flow with Jayden Daniels and has taken this offense to a lot of the top of the stat categories as well. So he's had a big part to do in all of this. And, it sounds crazy when people are talking about Jayden Daniels, back on him, as being one of the favorites for MVPs and things like that, or talking about the Commanders winning the division. That was insane a couple weeks ago, but now it's looking a bit more likely now. I think more people are jumping on that bandwagon for the Commanders at least to win that division. MVP or anything like that, I think it is a little crazy still for Jayden Daniels as a rookie, but if they remain at 1 loss, that's a pretty interesting question, right? How many wins do they have to put up in a row now for people to actually take this seriously? Let's say if they're like 7-1, 8-1, is he truly a candidate to win MVP? I think that could be the absolute ceiling that we see from Jayden Daniels, but we don't know up until now. This is definitely going to be their biggest test so far. And then on the other side, looking at the Baltimore Ravens, again, no real injuries for them either. Marlon Humphrey could be dealing with something, a lower leg injury, because he was seen walking in a boot after the Bengals game. So that's something to monitor, but it's nothing else really that needs to be of our greatest concern yet for the Baltimore Ravens. They've won their last 3 games in a row as well. They're on a little bit of a streak like the Commanders are. And their offense is hitting on all cylinders right now. Their last home game, they dominated against another high-powered offense as well. So are they going to put up an encore to that performance and, again, run all over the Commanders like they did the Bills? And is their defense going to look like a top 5 defense like it did against the Bills? Those are all questions, and some of the matchups I'm looking at as well that kind of go off of that revolve around that, because we're looking at one of them being the Baltimore Ravens offensive line combined with Derrick Henry against this Washington Commanders defensive line combined also with Bobby Wagner. Probably the leader of that defense, if you had to pick someone, calling out all the plays, quarterbacking that defense, if you will. And how does he stop Derrick Henry, right? How does he line everything up? Which line, offensive line, defensive line matchup is going to win the day on Sunday? And that's going to be a big predecessor on how, or a big a predictor on how everything is gonna play out on Sunday, because the Ravens offensive line has been blocking very good in the running game, and Washington's defensive line, I feel like people thought it'd be worse, but they're actually playing a little bit better. So that's a matchup I'm interested in looking at. Then also Cliff Kingsbury, I mentioned him before and how good of a job he's doing. He's going up against a new defensive coordinator in Zach Orr, very limited to no experience as a coordinator. So who's going to win that chess match, right? How is Cliff Kingsbury going to game plan around maybe taking advantage of some of the deficiencies for the Ravens defense? Or maybe can Zach Orr impress again like he did against the Bills and stop this very high-powered offense for the Washington Commanders? That's something that fascinates me looking at that also. And the Baltimore Ravens secondary going up against a very a very light receiving group for the Washington Commanders, because outside of Terry McLaurin, like I said before, it's not too eye-popping, right? The other names that stick out. So are they going to be able to completely dominate them, or is Jayden Daniels really just going to be on the money throwing seeds out there to these guys to make them look better? That's going to be something to definitely watch. And now finally my prediction. If I were to give a prediction in this game, you know what I've noticed about these predictions that I've given out? Usually it goes to the home teams or the one that should win, right, in a lot of people's minds. But I think I'm going to go with the Commanders now to shock everyone by going into Baltimore and beating, almost like their carbon copy of themselves, but just a younger version with Jayden Daniels, right? Because I think the Ravens have had the obvious luxury of never having to play Lamar Jackson, right, because he's obviously on their team. But now they get their own taste of what everyone has had to deal with for the last, I don't know however long Lamar's been in the league, but you get the point, right? They've never had to play someone like that, other than maybe Kyler once in a blue moon or something like that. So now they're going to get a taste of it yet again. It's very different than playing, obviously, Joe Burrow for as good as he is. You get a taste of it with Josh Allen a little bit, but I don't think he's as nimble and as just quick in a short area like Lamar, like Jayden Daniels are. So I think that could bring a couple problems for this team. Also, protecting against the pass, or protecting against the most accurate quarterback in the league, and he's got top speed on top of that. It's something that requires a lot of discipline, and I feel like sometimes this Ravens secondary and Ravens defense just overall gets a little bit loose, isn't too strict on their X's and O's, right, if that makes sense. So I feel like that could be something that not a lot of people are talking about, and this defense has been shaky against the pass overall. So this run game with Washington is also going to be very important, and if they could get a little bit of something going there and get Jayden Daniels going in the run game as well, it's going to make those matchups easier on the outside. And I'm going to go with a surprise here. I'm going to go with the Commanders going to 5-1 and the Ravens dropping to 3-3. And we're fully buying into the Jayden Daniels sweepstakes now. If they get this win, if you thought people talked about Jayden Daniels before, if he gets this win, just wait until what everyone's saying about him the following day. So we'll be looking forward to that. Hopefully they get that done. As a Steelers fan, trying to hide my bias. But that is the preview to that game. We're going to get into more previews tomorrow on tomorrow's show. But for right now, we're going to get into another break, and we're going to bring up a topic that I thought was interesting, how the NFL looks a lot more even this year. I don't know what it is. I'm going to try and give you guys an answer on what I think it is, but there's been a lot more competitive games. Anybody seems that they could beat anybody so far through 5 weeks in the NFL. We're going to talk about that, why that is, and I'll give my explanation for why I think we've seen a lot more of an even playing field in the NFL so far. So stick around for that. We'll be right back in just a few seconds.